Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal, Dahiya, and today we will discuss the way forward in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Escalation of violence in Kashmir accompanied by the enhanced local recruitment by terror outfits has become a cause of concern of late in the strife-torn state of Jammu and Kashmir. The first half of this year witnessed a series of successful strikes by security agencies against terrorists and especially their leaders. According to an RTI reply, 135 terrorists have been killed in the state so far this year in the counter-terror operations by the security forces. On the 71st Independence Day, Prime Minister, in his address from the ramparts of Red Fort, spoke about the strategy to resolve the crisis in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. He said the path to resolving the protected dispute does not lie in using violent means or vilifying Kashmiris, but in embracing them. And the leaders of two mainstream parties in Kashmir, PDP and National Conference, and the moderate chairman of Hurriyat Conference have welcomed the Prime Minister's remarks, but have also urged the centre to walk the talk. To deliver the results, both the centre and the state will have to address concerns about delivering responsive governance while managing the troublesome task of maintaining internal security. So does Prime Minister's statement signal a change in the policy of the government vis-a-vis Jammu and Kashmir? And how will it add on to the efforts in resolving the crisis in the state? For a detailed discussion on this, we are joined by a distinguished panel of guests in the studio. Let me introduce you to them. Starting with Mr. Tilak Devasher, former Special Secretary in the Cabinet Secretariat. We also have with us Captain Alok, Bansal, Director of India Foundation. And we also have with us retired Major General Shashi Asthana, Chief Instructor of USI. And we will also be joined by Security Analyst Devadas from Jammu and Kashmir on the phone line. Let me begin with you first, Mr. Devasher. What exactly do you make of that important statement which has been made by the Prime Minister from the ramparts of the Red Fort? Does it signal some sort of change in the government's policy?
Thank you. I do not think it represents so much as a change as an addition. You see, the government's policy so far has been military. We've had, as you mentioned, a lot of successes vis-a-vis the terrorists in this year. We've also focused on development. Huge packages have been sent. What the Prime Minister was adding on to these two was a healing touch.
Okay.
That is something, an emotional bond with the state of Jammu and Kashmir, which probably has been underplayed or lacking, in fact, if I can use a stronger word, all these years. So he's reaching out to by saying, not with bullets nor with abuses, but by embracing the Kashmiris. Now that's a huge opportunity because it means, you're actually reaching out to the people of J&K and saying that let's come together. So I think it's not a change. It's an addition to what the government policy already was. And I think it's a very important thing because so far just military or development has not worked. What it needs is to bring the Kashmiris heal, that healing touch, winning the hearts and minds.
The confidence building measures.
Not only confidence, it's the emotional content, which I think the Prime Minister was signaling. And that's a very important addition, I think.
Okay, Captain Bansal, do you agree with what Mr. Devasher is saying? That it's an add-on to what the government has done so far in the last 3 years?
The government has never been averse to talks. I think we have always said that talks will be done. They should be from a position of strength.
The Home Minister himself was there in Srinagar.
See, they should be from a position of strength. What we have seen is that in past few months, security forces have gone in a very, very systematic manner, eliminating the so-called poster boys of terrorism. So anybody who was actually used to whip up emotions and rally the anti-India forces have been eliminated. And Prime Minister has not said that this will not continue. What he is saying is that we have no ill will towards anyone and we are willing to talk to anyone and everyone within the constitutional norms. And that has always been the position. Probably now that the situation has improved in Kashmir Valley in terms of security, people would be more amenable to come. There are different sections of society within Kashmir which are actually indicating that they want to come and talk to the government of India. They want to get into the mainstream. For too long has Kashmir been deprived of the fruits of development because of some sort of an insular mindset that has prevailed within the leadership of Kashmir.
Okay, we will come to that point as well, wherein the Prime Minister, as you're pointing out, has not said that the other part of this particular process will not continue. Let me bring in Major General Asthana here. Again, the primary question before we jump on to the second one is, are you in agreement with what both our panelists are saying out here, that it is not a change at all, what some people are talking about, that, this seems to be a shift in the policy? It's not actually. It's just an add-on.
Firstly, I agree with that it's an add-on. But I would like to add something to it. Firstly, as per counter-terrorist strategy is concerned, as we define it in military, it is exactly the same thing. And we say that in this strategy, population, in military terms we call it, is the center of gravity, whereas it is the key factor. And why I say key factor? Because population gives us intelligence, so it helps the security forces. From the militant side, if population does not give them logistic support, does not give them intelligence, does not give them all other wherewithals, they can't survive. So population becomes important, and therefore the embracing population is required. But what is the population means? Now, if you see, divide the population, 95% of the people who are the sufferers, and I have full sympathize with them. Let me define that. Abu Duzan was killed.
Okay.
The day in some channel I was asked, I am sure the security forces would be very happy. Yes, they were very happy, but there is one segment of the society which nobody talked about. These are those ladies who have been raped by Abu Duzan statistically. They would be the most happiest people. Now, they are the sufferers with whom we need to sympathize.
So you're saying that this is an effort to go ahead and put balm on the, the sufferings which people have faced.
Exactly. I'll give you another thing, considering all the 3 points which Prime Minister has said. There was one person, he came to us. We knew that militants come to his house and he will never give the information. He came to us a day running that, sir, I want people and I'll give you the information, militants will be killed. You just come with me. I asked him, so far you have not given. What happened today? He said, sir, so far they were coming to my house, they were eating my food, they were raping my wife. I kept quiet because had I opened my mouth, my family would have been wiped out. But then I asked him, why did you come today? He says, sir, today what has happened is all of them have raped my wife in front of my eyes. They have taken her that you have not cooked the food properly. They have said that we have to pesh karo her to some other friends. And if she doesn't cook, we'll kill. I've got 5 children.
So basically the atrocities you're talking about. Let me bring in another of our guests here, who's in fact right now at the ground zero. That's our security analyst, Mr. Devadas. Mr. David, if you could hear me, what is your viewpoint as far as this particular statement is concerned? Or rather, are people in Kashmir also looking at this from the same perspective as our panelists are talking about, that this is an add-on to what the government has done so far in last 3 years, the efforts which the government has made to have those confidence-building measures with the people of Kashmir?
Broadly speaking, that is not how the perception on the ground has worked out over the last couple of years, 3 years more. There has been a perception that there is not that kind of intent that was quite obvious in the Prime Minister's statement from the ramparts of the Red Fort. So it's a wonderful thing that it has been welcomed by the entire range, from the Chief Minister at the one end to Mirwais Umar on the other. And a whole lot of people thought that it was a great statement of intent. Now, I think the most important thing is to translate this into action. And narrativization and the kind of language that we use quite often does not necessarily help. And I think we should be very, very conscious of it. In order to be able to take forward what the Prime Minister has opened the door to, we need to focus on positives rather than the sort of narratives that we have been using and that we seem to be continue to use. Now, what happened with the Prime Minister's statement was that a lot of people were reminded of the time when Mufti Muhammad Saeed and Mr. Vajpayee were in power. And Mr. Vajpayee had tremendously changed the attitudes and the aspirations, the perception on the ground in Kashmir. And let us remember, he took very bold steps. I think it was November 2001 when he announced on his own a unilateral ceasefire, which was a very bold thing to do at a time when the suicide attacks were at their peak. Now, that is the sort of bold action that might be taken, and the sorts of things that people need to be, their fears, their uncertainties need to be put at rest.
Okay, that brings us, as David was pointing out, that brings us to the second part of this particular entire discussion, and that is, as David was pointing out, taking that bold action. Now, this is not the first time all of us are aware that even 15 years ago, similar kind of statement was made by Mufti Muhammad Saeed. Similar statements have been made earlier as well. But then the history is dotted with failures as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned, both on part of the state government as well as centre. So, talking about the bold steps, where are those kind of bold steps in the offing in some time? Do you see that happening? Because you would be aware that the counter-insurgency operations are as much important as taking these, steps which go ahead and build those confidence with the population.
Yes, I think the devil is in the detail. How do you translate this, what the Prime Minister said, into action on the ground?
In the action.
See, military operations will continue and have to continue. Developmental work which is going on, skill development, giving people jobs, that has to continue. This, as I mentioned, how do you implement something which is so nebulous? How do you reach the hearts and minds of the Kashmiris? The one thing which is very important, which has also happened simultaneously with this, is what the NIA has been doing.
Okay.
The NIA has gone after the financial structures.
Terror funding.
Terror funding and the conduits of finance, which has kept the agitation alive, which is clearly proved now. The last 1 month, you see finance has been clamped down. You don't find. So much so that even today, Mr. Gilani is talking about Kashmiriyat, Insaniyat, and something which he has scoffed all these years because his 2 sons and 1 son-in-law is under the NIA gaze. So this is definitely having an impact. Now this is on the hard stick, but on the softer side, couple of points. You watch Indian television in Delhi, for example. The only time Kashmir comes on and when there has been a terrorist incident, somebody or something bad, there is no positive story coming out on Kashmir.
Okay.
So when the Kashmiri is watching television, what does he see?
So as David was saying, the positive narrative has to be given more importance.
We actually, I think the first hearts and minds have to be one of the Indians. First, we have to start looking Kashmir much more positively and take the Kashmiris along with us. So that's one. Second, media. Across all media, whether it is print, whether it's electronic, whether it is cyber, we must convey the same message to Kashmir. Today, there's a lot of discordance. Somebody is saying this, somebody is saying this, government kuch keh rahi hai. All this should be on the same page so that the Kashmiri doesn't get confused or what is India trying to say or do.
Okay.
We should not give mixed messaging. So these are some of the things that as we go along,
which need to look at.
We need to tackle radicalization, for example. Maybe we'll come back to it.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Captain Bansal, what is your take on this? Is it a twin strategy which the government is working on, and is it possible? Because this is a very very difficult task to maintain that fine balance.
See, government has always believed in this point of view that while there can be no leeway as far as terrorists are concerned, they need to be eliminated or brought to justice. Government will go out of its way to talk to the masses. And we need to understand that the problem today in Kashmir is primarily that a section of youth is getting influenced by the narrative that is being churned by global Islamic organizations. As a result, what we are seeing today is actually radicalization. And people are talking of sympathies for global Islamic organizations like Al-Qaeda, Daesh and things like that. And I think for countering these, we need to come out with a counter narrative. And that has been a weak link because Indian establishment has still not understood the rationale for radicalization. Very often we come out with many of their columnists, many of our analysts come out with some piecemeal solutions where they talk of alienation or things like that. But the fact is that today's youth in Kashmir is driven and is carried away by a narrative that is being churned thousands of kilometers away, which is seeped into theology. Since we don't understand theology, we often tend to ignore it. Now, this theological narrative has to be countered.
That has to be countered.
And along with that, government is needed to be seen as a friendly government. And I think that's what Prime Minister has said. Prime Minister said we are willing to talk, we are going to uphold the liberal, secular dimensions of Kashmir's polity, Kashmir's culture, and at the same time we are going to deal with the terrorists.
Okay, let me bring in Major General Asthana here on this part. General, do you believe that this is not going to interfere with the counter-terrorism offensive which is on right now? The figures which I pointed out in the beginning of the program, 135 terrorists killed in the first 7 months of this particular year, almost double of what the intelligence sources they have joined the ranks.
As far as these operations are concerned, I think Prime Minister in the later statement, next statement,
he has made it clear.
Said that terror operations will continue as it is, and there will be no softness there. So as of now, what you see is that we are going in with a very synergized kind of operations, wherein the terror funding is being targeted, as my panelists have said already. Similarly, the government, the legal system is also helping out in some manner, like 35A I am referring to. Similarly, you see all government organizations and all security organizations are on one page. The intelligence is coming. Militants have killed a number of people. So sympathies are also shifting. Third point which I want to make out, which I want to tell everybody. The people of Kashmir must understand today that they have been used with these separatists trying to build their empires and money on them. And the young people, I want to, through your channel, I want to give a message to them that, gentlemen, your bosses here and the separatists here, they have used you, they have used your head to earn money. Your Akas in Pakistan who are writing the narrative for you, so-called jihadi narrative. There is nothing like Azadi. There is no, they are all earning money on your dead body. That is what the reality is.
Okay, so
now coming on to the narrative part of it, the jihadi,
the positive narrative,
the narrative part of it, the jihadi part of it. You see,
radicalization, you're saying.
You see, the reality is money. The whole industry, terror industry, works on money. All these boys, when apple season is there, there is no stone pelting because there is no labor.
Because they're busy.
Because they're busy. After that, when they are not busy, then 100 rupees for throwing stone is quite lucrative to him. Similarly, there are guys who have no job and Article 35A doesn't allow you to have job because obviously no sensible industrialist is going to invest there. Simple. Because you can't own property there. So therefore, there is no job. And when he has no job, he finds this industry very lucrative. He has got a gun, he is a tomboy, he can go do whatever he wants. Extortion is possible, narcotic money is coming. There are a whole lot of organizations all over the world which are helping them out as
flaunt the gun, enjoy the movement and earn as well. That's what you're pointing out.
So therefore, for him it is very lucrative. So that is what is getting them recruited.
Okay.
And not this kind of ideology. We all know about the ideology part. 20 years we have fought there. We know the ideology part. It has got its own place.
Let me bring in Mr. David here. David, as our panelists are pointing out, you begin with the positive narrative. Everybody seems to be, in agreement with that. Specifically, as Mr. Tilak Devasher pointed out, that we need to have that positive narrative, and we should start with putting out, stories, positive stories about the state, about the people of the state. But radicalization is a very important issue. And my question is that by going on the path which the Prime Minister has pointed out in his statement, will it be difficult to counter that radicalization? Will it be difficult to continue with the counter-insurgency operations out there?
I think the counterinsurgency operations are continuing and are in South Kashmir, the police and the army have had great successes over the last 3 or 4 months, and under very, very effective officers in charge in South Kashmir, they've been making much headway.
Okay.
But just to let me just focus on a couple of things that you said in the course of your question. You used the term positive story. I think we should be cautious about even the term stories. The thing that we need to do to look at is credibility and how perceptions are, and people in general have a very strong sense wherever they are in whatever kind of community they might think of themselves as. They have a very strong sense of the credibility of what is being said. So Mr. Vajpayee, even in very, very difficult circumstances, achieved a measure of credibility which is unparalleled, I think. The other thing is you said, but radicalization. Now, that doesn't conform with what I was saying in terms of let us focus on the positive. So rather than talk about radicalization, which is a fact, let us also focus on other things such as the opportunity. Let us say, right in about a little more than a week from now, there will be Eid. That is an opportunity to express a sense of commitment to harmony across faiths and validation of different faiths. Then, for example, there is already, in concrete terms, agenda of alliance which was agreed between the BJP and the PDP.
And the PDP.
Yes, and which is an excellent document, which is a great starting point to move forward towards seeming to move towards credibility. Now, ranging from things like smart cities to upholding the current status or just giving reassurances.
So basically, David, what you're saying is that time has come now to build upon this statement, and as everybody, all the other stakeholders are also pointing out that the government should walk the talk, and David is pointing out that the agenda of governance needs to be focused upon, job should be focused upon, and the credible statements, I would deter from using the word story term, which as David was pointing out, but credibility is the overall concept out here. You're saying something about radicalization earlier as well, and he pointed out that radicalization is fine, we can fight that, but we will have to be credible as well.
You know, I don't agree that we understand radicalization or we understand ideology. I think there is a huge area which I certainly don't understand, and we need to call in experts, people who have dealt with this issue, who are aware of this issue, and who can communicate with the masses on radical. You can call it, there's alienation, right? Why does a 15-year-old, 14-year-old girl, those photographs that we saw, or boys, it's not only money. You know, the kind of pent-up hatred that is there. It's radicalization, it's alienation or whatever. We need to look at it far more closely. Let's not just dismiss it by saying ideology we know. We don't. We need to focus a lot on ideology, because what is happening in Kashmir didn't start in one day. There was 20 years behind it of things coming out from, let's say, mosques. You know, the kind of sermons being coming out. One other thing is that, you know, if you do a survey of all who are the clerics in the mosques, how many are Kashmiri and how many have come from other parts of India, especially from Bihar and UP, and who are the people who are actually radicalizing? How much of do we know what is being said in the sermons? We need to pay a lot of attention to radicalization without tackling radicalization as a complete, you know, something like a military operation or the economic development or emotional.
It will be difficult to implement all that what has been said.
Because, you know, whatever you are saying so far is not falling on the right kind of ears, because they think you are attacking religion.
Okay, we're running short of time. Captain Bansal, a final comment from you on this part, because you also, in the course of the discussion, said that theology is something which we don't understand.
One thing is, the human mind is such that what you don't understand, you think as trivially. It is not so. The radicalization is a very, very serious issue. It's not because of alienation also. Please understand. The youth that goes today to Iraq or Syria doesn't go because it's Palestinians are suffering or Kashmiris are suffering. So there is a theological narrative which draws them, which selectively quotes theology to draw upon every youth that it is his incumbent duty to adhere to particular norm. And that's what is happening. When a militant says that we have no political issue, we want Nizam-e-Mustafa, then you need to sit up and watch. Unfortunately, most of our security personnel do not understand theology. Zero. And that's where the problem is. They deal with it as a law and order problem which can be dealt with bombs and bullets. Bombs and bullets are essential, but you have to fight it in the brain. And for fighting it in the brain, you need to know the narrative which the terrorists are churning out and you had to come out with a counter narrative to counter that particular narrative.
So, okay, so it is clear that a lot of effort needs to be put in to ensure that what has been said by the Prime Minister is translated into action on the ground, and there are several dimensions to this particular problem and several dimensions to the solutions of this particular problem as well. But one thing which all of us know is that peace walks in lockstep with economic prosperity, and in addition to the positive narrative, what needs to be done is to provide more opportunities and, as the Prime Minister said, embrace the people of Kashmir. We'll come back again with a different topic and a different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.